Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I hope everyone is able to, well, to understand my English. I'm not a native English speaker, so sometimes I'm struggling with the English as much as maybe some of you do. Um, we last year we had, of course, well, some interruptions, some disruptions in the floriculture, and for us as a bank, it was a good reason to have a desk research and also to have a lot of interviews with people who are well, who are in the business of flower trade, so not in the flower production, but in flower trade. And for those of you who are familiar with the, let's say, more European situation, you know that production of flowers and flower trade in Europe most of the time is in different companies. So you have the producers, well, bringing their flowers to the auction, and then the traders, etc., buy the flowers or plants, etc. I might use the word flower, but usually I should talk about flowers and plants. Well, I have to do this by, I think, by my mouse. Yeah, maybe some background about Rabobank. Rabobank is a cooperative bank. Well, we were originated somewhere in 1890, so 130 years ago, as a small local cooperatives everywhere in the Netherlands, and they merged those local cooperatives to one bank, to one bank in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we are, let's say, a general bank. We also bank for private households. We have mortgages for them or whatever. But abroad, when we are going to, for example, the United States or Australia or Brazil, there we are a specialized food and agribusiness bank. And one of the, let's say, key issues of our bank, I think, is the research department. And I'm one of the analysts within the bank. And we have approximately 90 analysts worldwide working from South America, from Santiago, from Sao Paulo, so from Chile, from Brazil, from North America, in St. Louis, in Chicago, and also in California and New York, from Europe, Utrecht, which is our, it's not the capital of the Netherlands, but it's where our headquarters is based. But also in Singapore and Shanghai and Sydney, for example. So those 90 analysts cover, let's say, the different industries in food and agribusiness, as you can see on this slide on the left and the right. And I'm one of the analysts looking for fresh produce. And within fresh produce, I would say 90% of my time I'm looking at all kind of developments in ornamental, in the ornamental sector. That could be cut flowers, that could be indoor pot plants, that could be bulbs, could be trees, breeding, well, everything which is related to the ornamentals. I wanted to present approximately 1.5, let's say 30 minutes, approximately. And then we have, I think, there's quite some opportunities to ask me some questions or whatever, or maybe you have some feedback or some disagreements what I'm telling you. So I hope that's all right with all of you. Maybe it's well, here in the center, of course, that's me just a year ago on a presentation, but as you also can see this small picture, in black and white, more or less. My mother is sitting over here, the smallest of the children. So that is 80 years ago when we had a small vegetable farm in the Netherlands. My parents had that after World War II, but my grandpa, this is my grandpa and my grandma, approximately 80 or 90 years ago. What I want to do is uh, yeah, like the title of my presentation, I want to focus on 4 issues in the flower trade. Let's say in the whole supply chain, but especially in flower trade. So not so much looking at production, but how are these nice flowers and beautiful plants brought from production centers to the consumers, to the clients. And usually I start with the clients because there it starts. Your business is yeah, is based on that you have consumers, that you have people who like your products. That's the start of everything. Not that you have production, no, that you have customers, that you have clients. Then I look at some distribution aspects at sustainability and supply chain. And I think that will give us enough discussion for this 30 minutes. Just, let's say, some news of the last year, approximately, in a whole different, all kind of newsletters, all kind of press. And what's doing this is, of course, the appeal to the senses on the left. I think that's really important. So we have to look, of course, to the demand side. What's the consumer, what he's expecting from us. It's also about the house plant type, or about the succulents by the cactus, etc. I have a small thing about China. So a lot of different aspects on the market, on market developments and on consumption level. Also, of course, in the center and also on the right, a couple of articles on e-commerce and on online flower delivery, and I'll come back to that later. So I think the main aspects, if you look at consumption, are, of course, how is demand developing? How is export streams from one continent to the other? And how is online doing, especially when we're in this, let's say, COVID pandemic, where we have to deal with all kind of restrictions and lockdown. But on the other hand, online business is booming, really booming. And people like to, let's say, give their attention and their thankfulness to other people. But let's have a more analytic view on consumption. The purchasing motives. When I look at the flower market and the plant market, I usually look as a first way of dividing the market. You could say you have the gift or the present. So it's buying flowers or buying plants and giving these to someone else. And on the other hand, you have the personal use of their own use. You buy flowers and you keep them for yourself to dress up your bureau or your whatever. And the third market, you could say, is the business market. If you look at these 3 in the last year, for example, the gift and present market really boomed because we want to share our gratitude or our thankfulness to nurses or to our parents or whatever. And there's really a difference, for example, in the personal use between Europe and especially Northern Europe, where personal use of cut flowers is more, let's say, more in your day-to-day groceries than in the southern part of Europe or in North America, where personal use is not so introduced yet. And you have the business market. And for example, for trees and for shrubs and for perennials, the business market is quite important. If you look at Helleborus, for example, or Lavandula, or that kind of products, those are really sold to municipalities or to other kind of organizations who are looking at green cities, etc. Another way of looking at purchasing is looking at the holidays Valentine, we had a good Valentine's Day, I would say, in general. Mother's Day, in most countries, of course, the second Sunday of May, but in some other countries at another day. You could also look at other festivities like the funeral and the wedding, and I have some figures about weddings. You could look at birthday or exams, like in Russia, where the school exam is really a kind of celebration, and people like to give flowers to each other. So there are a lot of special days in the flower calendar. And well, for example, Royal Flora Holland, but maybe also Flores, has this year calendar of special holidays in, well, every country in the world. And again, a third way to look at purchasing is the consumer a kind of impulse buyer? Did he wrote down that he has to take some flowers with him when he goes to the supermarket, when he goes shopping, or is it just an impulse when he enters the building? Is he a regular shopper of flowers and plants, or even has he a subscription? For example, especially online flower delivery services have introduced a subscription service where you get let's say every 4 weeks, you get a new mixed bunch of flowers. Like, for example, in the Netherlands, one of them is Blue Mon, and in the United States, I think Urban Stamps has subscription of business of flower bunches, and of course, then you get a more regular pattern and less volatility in your trade. So I think we have to respond to consumer preferences. If I should say you have to take one takeaway of this presentation, I should say always look at consumer preferences. So first of all, of course, flowers appeal to the senses, to smell, to color, of course, face life. Then, of course, the convenience. Is it easy to buy? Is the florist shop just around the corner? Or can you buy the flowers in your local supermarket? Or do they bring the flowers within your subscription? The services should be matching, like packaging and instructions. And I really like the idea of getting a WhatsApp, for example, after a week after you bought the flowers, and you get an instruction to again cut the stems a little bit and add new water and add new flower feed, chrysal. Sustainability, well, consumer, and I'll give you some figures later on, sustainability issues are increasing in the consumer preferences. So there are part of the consumers are now really looking at how is it produced, how is it transported, what's the packaging, is it plastic, is it maybe paper packaging or whatever. And I just have one figure about consumption. It's about weddings. And this is really a long-term graph, long-term figures. And what you see on the left is the number of weddings per 1,000 persons a year in a lot of European countries. But I guess in the United States and Canada, we'll more or less have the same situation. And as you can see, in 60 years, the number of weddings, it went from, let's say, 8 weddings per 1,000 persons per year to 4 on an average. And last year, especially for Corona, a lot of weddings are postponed. And yeah, I think this year it's maybe a little bit in between, but maybe in 21 or 22 we see some more weddings because of people, well, are postponing their wedding from last year. But the general trend, of course, is that it's declining. So if you are, let's say, specialized in white roses, in white hydrangeas, in white lilies, for example, typical wedding flowers, then you should be aware of this trend. The same, more or less same trend, I don't have a graph on it, is about funerals. In Europe, less and less people are buried, but they are now going to the, how do you call that in English? Crematorium? Well, and a lot of people don't want flowers at a funeral, but they want a donation for, let's say, a cancer foundation or another target. So there are sold less flowers at funerals the last 10 years. So you should be aware of I think, in your future market about these aspects. And the last thing I want to show you about the consumption, it's also one particular thing about consumption within those general ideas, is the online delivery. Here we have a slide with, let's say, on the left, Great Britain and Ireland, with a lot of, currently a lot of flower delivery services, specific for, let's say, Great Britain, and especially Great Britain and Ireland, is that they don't have so much florist shops as in the rest of Europe. So you see a lot of online delivery services, and some of them are just having their online deliveries in the neighborhood of let's say, London, or even in the Midlands, not in Scotland or not in Ireland. You also see some names about online delivery in Europe. Some of them more related to the florists, like Blume 2000, a German online delivery, or Fleurop, but also some very new startup ones like Bergamo in France or Bloemon in the Netherlands. So, and as in all kind of online delivery, I expect a consolidation for in the next 5 to 10 years. Some of them will become very big, and the other ones will be bought or wilt, as we speak in flowers. In the United States, last year there were still new startups in flower delivery. We have, of course, the let's say, more traditional ones like FTD or 1-800, who are already delivering flowers for many years, but also some more newer ones like Bloom Nation or Urban Stems. And I'm also looking at Asia, at China especially, but also in Japan or Taiwan, Floral Plus or Roses Only, etc. So everywhere in the 3 main spots of consumption, and I don't want to, it's not that there are no flowers sold in South America or Africa or Australia, but the main consumption spots are Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. So I'll have a focus on that. So that's some developments in consumption. And like I said earlier, I always start over there. The second, my second issue is the distribution. And the distribution, where do I buy my flowers or plants, and how as a flower trader, how do I transport all these flowers from production sites to the consumer? And there's also a lot of news here in this slide. And the retail channel, and I'll come to that at the end also, is, I think, a very important one. Which retail channel will be chosen by the consumer to buy his flowers or plants? The second issue is maybe the transport. I see a lot of developments and trials and tests in sea transport of flowers. And that would be really a game changer in my view. that would be really giving a lower footprint. And also if you can, for example, harvest your roses in Colombia or in Kenya already in December for Valentine's Day, that would really shift all kind of thing in the distribution. And then we have to look at stocks, for example, or we have to look at some other issues, and you might, and also payments, because, well, how do you finance everything between your production in December and your sellings in February? So there's a lot to discuss about distribution. If we just have this on the background, you see the World Flower Map of 2016. My colleague, Cindy Verrijswijk, gathered all kind of export and import materials, and she made the World Flower Map 2016 on the background. And in general, we have 3 large consumption centers in the world: North America, Europe, and Southeast Asia. So this was the situation. Then we go to what's the first way of, let's say, providing these consumption center with flowers and plants? Well, that's production in the consumption areas. So of course, the mainstream of flowers or plants for the United States is the production in the country itself. Maybe not the cut flowers, but the perennials, the bedding plants, the pot plants usually are going from the States to the States, or they are going from Europe to Europe. And from Southeast Asia, they stay in Southeast Asia. So this is really the main stream, product flow in the World Flower Map in 2027. And in my view, that will stay. That will stay the main product flow. And of course, in addition, we have this south-north bounce, this south-north exports, usually from Colombia and Ecuador to, let's say, North America, and from Kenya and Ethiopia to Europe, and a little bit from, let's say, Malaysia, etc., to China or Japan. So it's usually from south to north, production near the equator, and then bring it to the urbanization, to the cities in the northern hemisphere. But in 2027, with this disruption maybe of transport, so not only air freight or passenger flight bellies, but also with sea transport, my idea would be that we could get something like this, more than we have currently. So let's say from South America, you bring the flowers to Europe and also to Asia, and not only to North America. But on the other hand, the African competitors or colleagues, just what you want, bring their flowers maybe also to North America and Asia. So we have a more severe competition in the 3 main markets of the world, is my, let's say, my view on this. And especially if sea transport if we can transport flowers, cut flowers with conditioned transports from one continent to another, so also in east-west direction, not only in south-north direction, then competition will be tougher. And then you have this crossover between continents, is my idea for the, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years. And it maybe not for every flower from the start, but more and more flowers, I think, will be transported by sea containers. But I'm very curious about your ideas. So choices to make in 2027. On the left, there you see the contrary more in looking at sea transport, and you see here a sea container of Green Change and also of Fleur Metz and Dutch Flower Group. So a lot of traders, large traders, have trials on using sea transport from Kenya to, for example, to France or to other harbors in Europe. Or let's say what we do currently is using air freight or passenger bellies. If you look on the right side of this slide, I would say you see the train, and this is a picture of the Chelsea Flower Show in London, but if you are transporting it on land, then you can use train and truck combined. So it's not a competition between train transport and truck transport. I would say it's more a combination of them. Sometimes you could maybe bring flowers with a train from, let's say, from the Netherlands to Russia, and within Russia maybe you use a truck. So that could be also some idea, or to bring flowers from the Netherlands to Italy. And I don't know exactly the situation in the US, but there could be some possibilities too. And on the right, most on the right, there you have another transportation problem, or a challenge, as you wish. That's the last mile delivery. Because if we go to more online, every online delivery company has to make decisions about how are they managing the last mile, because that's the really crucial part in online, the last mile. So, you can't. It's the most expensive part maybe in your distribution. Not bring the flowers from Colombia to the Netherlands, or from Colombia to Miami, or from Miami to somewhere in let's say Kansas, in the center of the United States. But how do you bring a subscription from somewhere to a rural village, or whatever, a small town in the United States? So it's on the left, you could say, the transport between different continents. Then you have the train and the truck for, let's say, transport, let's say within the continent. And then you have a small truck or whatever, or maybe the bike in a city for the last mile delivery. So you have to make different distribution choices in your supply chain. And something else is, of course, as a bank, we are, of course, also looking at business criteria. Is how are different markets doing in general on some risk, on some business risks, as a currency risk. And this is a slide from the Dutch perspective, but you could also make this kind of slides from a Colombian perspective. Is there a currency risk? What's the payment behavior of certain markets? Is there a very seasonal pattern, or is it more a smooth, every month the same turnover? Is there a transparency in your supply chain? And what's the competition? And usually, of course, if everything is very fine on the left, then the competition is very severe. So, for example, Germany, you could say it's a very mature market with low currency risk, good payment behavior. The seasonal pattern is quite low. There's good transparency, but the competition is tough. And so you should be aware of the risks. So it's not that you shouldn't deliver to those markets, but you should be aware of risks. And that's, of course, from a banker's perspective, you could say, a kind of warning or a kind of idea. Let's go to the third issue, and that's sustainability. I would say, you can see it on the slide, a number of topics, usually starting with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And here I I put the Royal Flora Holland's sustainability mission to look at those development goals. But a lot of growers are looking too, of course, at these issues. The use of water, crop control, and maybe in Europe, this is a little bit more, more discussed than it is in the North American markets. For example, a carbon tax in German floriculture in Germany really influences the market. So in general, I think in Europe and also in the European Union in Brussels, with the farm to fork strategy of the European Union, these issues are becoming important in Europe. And therefore, you, as a supplier to Europe, if you want to supply to Europe, you have to be aware of this. If you are a supplier just to the United States, maybe it isn't as important as in Europe yet, but I think in a couple of years they will go ahead in the same direction, more or less. Some of these issues are, of course, also important for your, let's say, for your profitability, like the energy use or labor use. You could say, of course, on one hand, cheap labor is good for your profitability, but for example, in the Netherlands, automation, robotization, the use of drones, the use of a lot of technology, etc., is also a way to, and also in distribution, is also a way to look at the labor issue. So not in paying your people less money, no, but looking at other ways to improve the business. And why do I think this sustainability issue is becoming more important? Here I have some background, some, let's say, argument for this. On the left side, you see the purchasing of sustainable flowers. So on the left side, you see flowers in 4 different countries in Europe. And in 10 years' time, you see, in general, you see that the number of people who is looking at sustainability of cut flowers is increasing. And on the right of this slide, you see this for plants. For plants, I think people are more aware of the sustainability issues, maybe because usually the vase life of a flowering plant or of a green leafy plant is longer, and you don't give it away. So you usually plants are more for personal use, and people are more aware of this sustainability issue if they buy it for personal use. If they buy cut flowers, they sometimes usually give them away. So let's say the awareness of the sustainability issue for consumers is maybe more on the plant side than on the flower side. But in general, I think this will grow. And I think, for example, that's my next slide. The Sustainability Initiative, the FSI, has now, let's say, reached a new goal for 2025. I think FSI is now 8 years old, and I think they did a tremendous work to let's say try to make one global idea of going ahead in this issue. And the first, you should be have a certification from the basket of standards. That's no question anymore in my view. No. And maybe still in the United States you can deliver flowers without certification, but in Europe this will become in a couple of years obliged by supermarkets, for example, or by florist organizations, as we see as we have a look at the members of FSI, a lot of supermarkets are now involved. A lot of big box retailers are involved. A lot of florist organizations are involved. So I really hope FSI will also is able to, let's say, look at the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and I think they will. Maybe in China, it will take a little bit longer even than in North America, but you should be, I think, aware of this direction where we are going to, and maybe the speed or the pace of this direction is not clear for everyone, or maybe there could be some hiccups, but the general trend is that this is the first step, getting certified. The second step should be, of course, improvement. So if you have your MPS, if you have your, one of these,
Flor verde.
your flor verde, yeah, flor verde. Thank you.
Don't forget.
No. Thank you. So if you have one of these, you should look at improvement, and I think certification schemes will add new ideas or new things in their certification schemes. And of course, we have to discuss in what pace they will have to do this. But in the end, I think it will come to a kind of life cycle analysis, not only of your own business, but of your supply chain. So sometimes you should do something in your distribution because that gives so much advantage for the production, or the other way around. Sometimes the production has to do something which gives so much advantage for the distribution, or sometimes the distribution should do something because it gives a lot of advantages in the retail channel. So a life cycle analysis in, let's say, in the whole supply chain. It starts maybe with an LCA on your own on your own business level, but in the end, I think it will be an LCA on supply chain level, and we really should look at, for example, at climate agreement, and in Europe, maybe a little bit ahead of North America again, like this carbon tax regulations, etc., could influence also this transport dilemma between sea transport and air transport, and it could also influence, let's say, greenhouses, flowers in greenhouses in the Netherlands on one hand, and maybe flowers near the equator on one hand. And for those who have visited the Netherlands, well, approximately 10% now is already heated with geothermal energy, so they don't use fossil fuels anymore. So this is really something we have to keep in mind, I think. The organic production is maybe not so in the picture as in fruit and vegetables, but for example, the online deliveries, some online deliveries are really make advertisements with it. And last year in this COVID period, you could say, in 2020, the sellings of organic tulips, for example, which was a purely, let's say, Dutch product, more or less, but was doing very well. So it could be, I think the next 5 years, it will be a niche, just a niche, but for some of you, it could be maybe an interesting niche. Then I go to the last, let's say, issue, last topic of the presentation. It's the supply chain. And here again, you see some words, some like consolidation, cooperation, integration. Looks maybe a little bit words for maybe the same idea or the same trend. Digitization, for sure. We really are, we are now presenting in a digital way, and economies of scale. I would say that are the main characteristics of the supply chain for the next 5 yes, let's say 5 to 7 years, in my opinion. And everyone has to, for their own business, you have to decide what to do with all kinds of characteristics of your company. How are you organizing your transport? How are you organizing payments? How is your quality control? What's your IT services, your ERP systems, HRM policies, marketing, together or alone or whatever. Stocks, like I said, I think maybe in cut flowers, this is going to be a new item if you can, let's say, extend the vase life and extend in a controlled atmosphere, then we have to deal with stocks. Now we are still running because every hour usually the quality is declining, and we have to bring the roses or the chrysanthemum or the carnations as quick as we can from production to consumer within a cold chain, of course. But well, if we have new technology for this or new techniques, then there's going to be this new issue of stocks in cut flowers, as we have already in leafy greens or in flowering plants. We have stocks or packaging, of course, and how are we trying to decline the number of packaging, and sometimes plastic is not as, you could say, maybe as worse as we think, but the consumer awareness of plastic is very bad. Everyone think paper packaging is maybe better, but is it really? Question mark. And of course, we have still to deal with compiling bouquet or bunches. So some of the production is still, let's say, a half product. It's not the end product. At this moment, I have one bouquet of tulips and I have one mixed bouquet. So I have one end product, the tulips. They can be packaged already at the producer, but the mixed bouquet with Lilium, with Gerbera, with Solidago, with whatever. Well, I think it's maybe from a company in Alsmere or whatever. So you have still this problem of that somewhere in the chain you have to compile these bouquets. Painting, well, it's just a very small part of the supply chain, but still sometimes blue colors are, we have not enough blue. And there are some markets like the Russian market who like to have painted colors. Well, I think it stays a niche. A schematic view of the supply chain. And it's maybe a little bit not the US Colombian situation, but it is as we look at the European situation, and I'll come to some differences with the, let's say, American situation. On the right-hand side, you see our expectations of the market. How is the consumer buying flowers and plants? Approximately in 2027. We think approximately 10% will be sold or purchased at a street market or at on-farm sales or maybe gasoline station. Then we have approximately 30% which is bought at a florist shop or a garden center. Let's say a specialized shop. Then also approximately 30% is bought in an online way. So with a mobile phone or with a laptop or with a computer or whatever. So it's how does the consumer buy his flowers or plants? And 30% at the big box retail. And this is, let's say, the European situation. I'll come to the North American situation a little bit later. The current situation is not 10, 30, 30, 30. The current situation is approximately 10, 45, 15, 30. maybe even 10, 50, 15, 25, something like that. But the trends are really going this way, 10, 30, 30, 30. So the florist shop and also the big box retailer is not, the florist shop is declining in market share in Europe. And well, so they try to also pick some of these online sales. And the big box retailer is also doing that. That's why we put some dots on the right. They try to have part of that online market too. And how is the trader? What's he doing? We think we will get a couple of very large, suppliers who will supply all these retailers and all these retail channels. But there will be specialized traders for the florist shop and garden centers, and there will be more what we call fulfillment centers or service providers for the online and big box retailer. So there will be some differences in the different retail channels. And the bottom of the slide, we see all kinds of services, all kinds of companies who are, let's say, have a different function in the whole supply chain. They are not really trading flowers or trading plants, but they have some idea about sourcing or logistics or IT or HRM or whatever. So we see a lot of companies in, let's say, in Schiphol or in Amsterdam area, looking at transport also, logistics. And in the center of this scheme, you see forward and backward integration. And also, of course, the latest mergers of United States traders with some production, with some farms in Ecuador, Colombia, etc., is, you could say is, I think, a trend which will go on, which will continue. I think I have 2 slides, so looking at the time. This is what we think more or less will be the situation in North America. So I said that 10, 30, 30, 30 is more the EU, the European situation. If we go to North America, we think online even will reach 35% in 2027 or something like that. And the supermarket and big box retailer will reach 40% market share. And the florist shop or the garden centers, 20% and maybe 5% at, let's say, streets or markets or whatever. They don't have the tradition as much as in Europe of florist shops and garden centers. So that's really why we think that the market shares of the supermarket channel and the online channel will be higher in North America. And if you go to the South Asian market, we didn't calculate numbers, but I would guess the florist shop and the garden center is even less than in North America, because there is no tradition in China, for example, in bricks, in florist shops within a building. They have markets, of course. They have street purchasing, buying flowers on the street, etc. But they don't really have florist shops or garden centers. And maybe even that 20% of florist shops, garden centers in North America is less in Southeast Asia. Maybe the street and the market in South Asia is a little bit higher. So I would say this 40 and 35 is maybe correct for Southeast Asia too, but this will be maybe 15 on the street and maybe 10 in the retail channel. So what I try to say to you in this approximately 40 minutes, I think, is that there are a lot of different challenges for the distribution and for the flower traders. And I think it's time for some questions, maybe.
Yes. maybe a couple questions. Thank you, Lambert. Andrés, ¿estás allí?
Sí, Augusto. Buenas tardes. Thank you, Lambert. Let's see if we have some questions from the audience. ¿Alguien en el público quisiera hacerle alguna pregunta específica a Lambert?
Or maybe in the chat, I don't know.
Maybe I have one, Lambert.
Okay.
I mean, in this pandemic, well, every business has been hurt somehow, and we have had difficult times. But at the same time, we felt a stronger demand. I think this helped the consumer to see the importance of flowers and the emotional impact of flowers. Do you think that's something that will last, will stay, and we can think of a higher consumption per capita in the future, or a higher big potential opportunity to promote our flowers? What do you think about it?
Yep. Well, I have some ideas. First of all, and I will make a difference between flowers and plants, because the cut flowers were bought to let's say express gratitude to each other, or even love or something like that, for your parents or for whatever, and gratitude for, let's say, nurses or whatever. So if the pandemic is really, let's say, if we can really pass on and then the pandemic will be over, I think for cut flowers, I'm a little bit more pessimistic than I am for plants, because what's happening, especially in, for example, white collar workers like myself, more or less, we are working more from home, and I think people also like to have some plants, some green plants or some flowering plants in their own environment, in their own living room or whatever. So for the Europeans, but the Europeans have a little, let's say, a higher consumption level in flowers and plants as the Americans. In the Americans, what we see is that the supermarkets are very positive about the revenues of cut flowers. So in the United States, and I discussed it also with my colleagues over there, they say, well, supermarkets are very positive about the revenues and also about their margins. So it maybe lasts a little bit more in North America, and the North Americans will really come to, let's say, European consumption levels maybe of cut flowers, or at least part of their consumption level. But in Europe, I'm a little bit hesitating about a very positive idea if it will last.
Sí, pero fácil. Sí, pero estoy en una asamblea, entonces cuando termine hago eso, le mando la cosa.
El micrófono.
Sorry. ¿Cómo vas?
Juan Carlos, creo que tienes abierto el micrófono.
Andrés Toro, el micrófono.
¿Cómo?
I'm sorry, I don't.
I'm sorry, somebody who had the mic open. Go ahead.
Thank you, Lambert. Now we have a question from Carlos Manuel Uribe.
Thank you, Andrés. Hello, Lambert. My question is, how do you see the future of the auction in Holland?
Interesting question. 2 weeks ago, I had a presentation for the management team over there. So, well, they are still looking at their role in the supply chain, and I showed you this schematic view on how Europe is doing, and well, they are a servicing organization. And which services will they add to the supply chain? And for smaller traders, they will still have a lot of services, but for the big traders, like maybe Dutch Flower Group or Flora Metz or Floral Trade Group, well, the added value of the auction is becoming less and less. And so they are looking, of course, at still combining all the supply of, you could say even of the world within their digitized way, a Floriday, and that's not easy. They will for sure be there in 5 years, for sure. But in general, you could say that the how do you call it? The physical transport of a flower will become separate from the administrative or the financial part. You will not, let's say, transport roses from Kenya through the Netherlands to the United States. That's not efficient in my idea. Or from Kenya to Shanghai. But maybe because still the payment conditions, etc., of the auctions are quite well for the Africans at least, they will still use the auction as security for their payments. But physically, those roses will be transported from Nairobi to Dubai or from Nairobi to Shanghai. So, in my view, these three big consumption centers will have their own hub. We have Miami, we have Amsterdam, Aalsmeer, and we have Shanghai. Three main, let's say, floriculture hubs in the world for the physical part of your logistics. Well, if they will succeed in having, let's say, this supply, this let's say total supply of the world in Floriday, I don't know yet. But there is, of course, one thing which is really different between, let's say, floriculture and vegetable sector or fruits. Usually a lot of researchers or analysts are comparing those, that is the mixed bouquet. If you're looking at roses or tulips, the majority of those are sold, let's say, as a bouquet of roses or a bouquet of tulips. But if you look at chrysanthemum, Lysianthus, gerbera, whatever, solidago, those are sold in a mixed bouquet. So you have to, somewhere you have to combine all those products. And you can do that close to production or close to consumption. And if you don't have all the products, like Ecuador, which is almost, let's say 80% roses. Colombia is more diversified, I would say. Then this combination will take place in Miami. And for the Africans, if I think approximately 70% is now roses, which comes from Ethiopia and Kenya. So they don't have the full portfolio. They don't have the full assortment. So you still have to, you have to have a hub where you combine all those flowers. It's maybe not a total answer to your question, Carlos, but
but it's good.
But okay. I don't know exactly the answer.
Yeah, no, but that's what some insight into it. So, okay, Lambert, we're sorry the thing we had at the beginning, but it's a legal issue about quorum to do approvals and all this in our general meeting. But now we have quorum. You got the quorum, so thank you. You brought the quorum. Now we have quorum, so we're gonna continue with our meeting now to get the approvals and everything. I think that it's been a great presentation and a privilege to have you with us. And I hope you can share with us the presentation. And two things. One thing is I want to invite you. I don't think you've been to Proflora, our trade show. We're going to have it this year in October 6th. I hope the pandemic will allow us. And it's going to be our 30th anniversary. So it's a special event. We'll send you the information and everything. And the other thing is that we really would like to have the presence of Rabobank in Colombia. There is a lot of things you could do here, and you could help with the knowledge in agriculture. We've been talking with the people in Chile and a little bit in Brazil with Andres. But yes, maybe someday that will happen. So it's been really good and great. Yes. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
if I make some closing remarks, Augusto, thanks for the invitation. I know Rabo is considering Colombia as maybe a next step in our development. So especially from Chile and Brazil, going also to Peru and maybe also to Colombia. I know they are looking at, but I don't know the decision yet. So that's one. And the other thing, I know that in June, I think the president of Colombia is coming to the Netherlands. And so, yeah, maybe some of you are joining him, etc. And well, there will be, I think, also some program in horticulture in the Netherlands for maybe this trade mission, etc. So that might be an opportunity to meet too, but maybe it depends a little on the pandemic. I can imagine. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too sure. So yeah, that's. And I will make a PDF and send it to Andres and from the presentation. No problem.
Okay. Good news, Lambert. I didn't know he was going there. He has planned a few trips. Hope he can make them. And if we can join him, we will. It will be really important. And having Rabobank here will be great. And if we can be of any help for the people analyzing this project or whatever, we're ready to help them in this. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Well, then I'm going to mute and to close my video and wish you a good meeting.
Lambert,
Thank you very
much, and hope to see you in the next opportunity. What we all know, the auction might not be there in a few years' time, but the flowers will for sure be there. So we're going to continue sending our beautiful and inspiring flowers around the world.
Okay, Andres. Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.